Again. There we go. So welcome to everybody. Really glad to see all of your faces. Just as a quick reminder, our next meeting of the Family Council on August 25th will be a picnic here at AID. Everything will be provided, food and beverages. So, and we're going to start 1 hour earlier at 6 p.m. We'll, aim for like 6 to 8 p.m. Executive leadership will be here except for a couple of people who are on vacation, and we are not going to make them come back for our picnic. Hope that you will come and that you will enjoy. And that was part of our plan. If you remember at the way back to the beginning of the year, we wanted to have some social times together, right? And so this is our second social. The first one was a few months ago. When was that? March or April, I think. And we had a really nice time, and a lot of, we probably had 30 plus people that showed up to that. So that was very nice. So we look forward to next week. And speaking of vacation, we have Megan with us, who is at the lake, and it's so very nice to keep up here and do some presentation for us around person-centeredness and everything else under the sun that she wants to talk about, because we love to hear what she has to say and share.
You're giving me a wide berth there, Lori, of things I could talk about.
There you go. Yeah, I heard Megan a year ago at the ARC of Illinois convention, and she did this same presentation on family-centered agencies. And I thought a lot of what you said, Megan, was excellent. So I wanted the group here to hear it. So thank you so much for being with us.
No, thanks for having me. I told Lori I would talk about family-centered care anywhere, including the lake. I will warn you that this is sort of a vacation family reunion. There's 15 folks downstairs, and I've warned them not to come up here, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. If I can trust them not to come up here, I don't know. So I'm Megan Udy. I'm the Liggis Family Advocate with the ARC, and I primarily work in Central and Southern Illinois, and family-centered care is kind of one of my niche interests. My background is in family-centered care in the pediatric hospital setting, and so many of those ideas carry over to the developmental disability system. I have a daughter named Annie who is 22 years old, who has intellectual and developmental disabilities, and have a real interest in kind of how the system integrates the voice of families into support. And so that's what I was going to talk to you about today. I'm going to share my screen. Now, I will tell you that I sent myself this PowerPoint in PDF form, which is not at all my preference, but because I now don't have access to my other computer, I just have to live with it. So I apologize. I can't fix typos or anything from this, and we're all going to have to live with my typos in my PDF. So let's see. Hang on one second. I got to get it's going to want to switch for me. And it doesn't. There we go. So I want to talk a little bit about, some of you may have heard some of this kind of discussion around family-centered care prior, but if you did not, I want to talk a little bit about what family-centered care is made up of, what that actually means, talk about barriers that folks run into around family-centered care, talk a little bit about self-advocates, individuals with disabilities, and their families, and kind of how they can act as advisors in the developmental disability system. And then I'm going to give you some examples. If you decide you want to implement some of these, and knowing Lori, you probably have already implemented some of these, the fact that you have such an active family group that consistently meets is unique, and I don't see that very often. And that's a sign that things are moving in a very family-centered direction. But I can give you some ideas as to how to make some other changes. So family-centered care is built around 4 key tenets, and this kind of crosses over healthcare and any other area where this family voice is built in. And one is open sharing of information, transparency. One is family participation in planning and decision-making, collaboration, partnering, and dignity and respect, especially around individual choice. And I think that's particularly important in the developmental disability system. So you've, I'm sure, heard, and it really came from the developmental disability system, but then was hijacked by the healthcare system, the idea of nothing about us without us. And that's really built into what family-centered care is, in that we don't build services and supports without having key stakeholders at the table to give feedback and guidance about what really works for them. And then obviously in this system, that's individuals with disabilities and their families. So in this case, I think the best way to think about it is standard support means an individual with a disability and their family are recipients of support, right? They reach out to an agency and they receive support that they're looking for, with the goal being they can live a full life in the community in a way that is meaningful to them and that they choose, right? And this family-centered care moves that, shifts that from, yes, I'm going to receive services, but I'm also going to participate in the planning of what those services look like and in the evaluation of how well those services meet my needs over time. And so I do see in the DD system more and more family voice in planning. I don't necessarily see family voice in quality assessment. And that's something that
Megan, I was
Sorry, Laura.
I'm sorry, I was trying to mute the noise and I muted you. I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. No, that's really fine. And so really what I'm going to talk about today is really how can you move from being a recipient to being a full participant in planning, and how can the service system encourage that? Oops, I moved away from my arrow. So I wanted to give you some examples of how this is used in healthcare, because I think it's easy to see why it transitions so well to DD services. And so these are some of the things when I was in the pediatric healthcare system that we worked on. And they're really kind of, again, core tenets of high quality healthcare with families involved. One was family-centered rounds. So when the care team would come around, everyone would wait for the family, gather around, and families would fully participate in hearing about not just, hey, this is what we're going to do next, but how are things going? What changes do we need to make? What concerns do you have? And that shifted from, when I started and we started talking about this, it was pretty regular that the care team would go into a room. If the parents were there, great. If the parents weren't there, no problem. They would do the rounds, they would move on, because it was all based on their schedule, right? Their needs, got to move things along. And over time, it progressed to when the family wasn't there, everybody said, where are they? We started asking, where are they? How can we get a hold of them? Should we call them? What do we do to get their voice? And that was a huge shift, because when families are participating in rounds or planning in the DD system, then all of a sudden it changes the entire script of what we're talking about, because you shift from a system-centered discussion around what the system needs to a discussion around what the individual and family needs. And that just forces that shift. Another piece of the puzzle in healthcare is having families participate in nursing change of shift. So I don't know if I have any nurses on the call, but I bet that I do. And in all the family-centered pieces that we worked on in healthcare, that was the most challenging, because we perceive change of shift time in healthcare to be our time, right? It's the provider's time. And so saying, no, I want families to be a part of that, because they're going to help you, for example, identify errors, talk about things that are high risk, talk about things that you haven't been able to see because they've maybe been at the bedside all day. And that was a tricky sort of thing to help shift. And that was a tough one. Families often participated as educators to new physicians and RNs. And that was always very eye-opening for all of us and a great opportunity to learn. We had families participating as mentors to other families, which I think you all are already in the position of doing that with each other in this group. But the DD system, as you well know, is overwhelmingly difficult to navigate. And as we have families coming into it new after a PUN selection, they're overwhelmed. I sometimes have families who just say, I don't want to do this because I just can't do this right now, right? I can't, you're telling me how it works and I'm overwhelmed, and can we just put this on hold, because it feels so overwhelming. But having a family come up behind them and say, you know what, that's exactly how I felt. I felt the same way. And I'm going to talk you through how we work through it, and I'm going to support you as you do it, is far more helpful than having a professional come in and say, this is how it's going to work, right? Because families want to know you did it, then I can do it. And then lastly, having families as advisors in process and design, and we're going to talk about that. And so this is kind of why, when I have to convince people why family-centered care, because that's a reasonable question. Why do we want to put the time into this? Why do we want to invest in this? Families bring something that nobody else can bring. They bring the context of an individual's choices, belief system, values. They can talk about the history, that an individual's had, which is critical to how somebody develops over time. They can talk to you about comfort and how that is really important in certain ways, consistency, and routine. And they can also talk about family culture and ethnicity and things that really add to an individual's life. And that can't come from anywhere else in the same way that it can come from families. And so if families aren't fully involved in the planning process for an individual, you lose some of that. And that can carry over systemically when we talk about process and design. So this is the slide that I worried about sharing when I initially talked about family-centered care, because obviously I want everyone to feel supported and engaged. But when we talk to families about assumptions that have been made, these are questions I ask families, and this comes directly from families. Kind of what assumptions do professionals make about families in the developmental disability system? And the themes I heard were pretty consistent. Perceptions that a family is overly involved or not involved enough, right? It's difficult to know, like, what is that line of how involved the family should be, what is helpful, what is not helpful, that the family can't understand the complexity of the system. So we don't give all the information sometimes because it's easier to just move forward without explaining it with the assumption that a family can't understand it. And I'll be honest, I understand where that perception comes from, because it is a very complex system, but certainly one that families learn to navigate, with support. Sometimes families' expectations are unrealistic. I'm sure all of you on the call have been told at one time or another that your expectations for your loved one might be unrealistic. And then maybe the very next day, your loved one does something that surprises you and you think, oh, that wasn't even on my radar. And so that's just a battle of having a loved one with an intellectual disability. Sometimes people think your ideas are unrealistic, but that is often what helps individuals achieve over time, because your expectations are higher than the system. Your goals aren't in line with what is possible. The perception that families should take care of their own adult child. I've heard that from professionals in the DD system. And you can kind of imagine that, the thought that there's judgment around families needing help supporting their adult children with DD. And lastly, the families can be hyper vigilant, right? Especially when an individual moves to a new living situation. We hear that sometimes. Would you all agree? Have you all heard some of those or felt some of those? No. So, in the process of putting together this discussion last year, one of the things I ask families is, when I say developmental disability professional, what's the first thing that comes to mind? And even though they acknowledge and identify the themes we just talked about, these are some of the words that came up when I asked. And you can see what 99% of those are positive words. So they're having positive experiences in the developmental disability system. They're getting positive support. They have a partner. They feel listened to. They feel supported, understood, but also these are things that they're seeking, if they aren't feeling those. And so families' perception about the DD system is interesting. Now, I will say this, one of the things that I think is most missing from developmental disabilities is asking families what they think about it. We don't really always ask families, tell me how you felt about, let's say, a transition to ACELA. How did that go for you? Tell me about the experience. What could we do differently? What could we do better? And that's something that we could really learn from, because sometimes we're so caught up in the complexities ourselves in the DD system of just making something happen, because it's so difficult to make something happen that we forget to ask, is this happening in the way that it should, or or in the way that's most useful or helpful, because we just have to get it done, right? And so when I asked families to give me some barriers they've identified, these spoke to me, they totally made sense to me. One is they only communicate with me when there's a problem, right? I heard that several times. No matter how many times we talk about it, medications are given at the wrong times or not at all. I can help them figure it out, but when I try to give guidance, they're defensive with me. Right? I'm gonna move this for myself. No one returns my calls. I don't know what to do. I leave messages. I send emails. I can't reach anybody. I think they're overwhelmed, but I still need to be included in how everything rolls out. Right. So all of those are really tied to how do we communicate with families? And without communicating effectively, we can't partner. And really those come down to these things. So some barriers that we see, a pretty historical tendency to do for, not with, right? The DD system does for very frequently. Lack of consideration regarding diversity, culture, and equity. Though I do see that we're having these conversations much more frequently around those issues. But that's something that was missing from the conversation for a while. Assumptions about family knowledge. Either the family already knows this. I mean, I've certainly been guilty of this. I'm talking to a family, maybe she tells me she's a special education teacher, and I think, oh, well, she knows most of this. And she'll stop me and say, no, Megan, I don't know, or I don't remember. I need you to explain it to me. And I, in that moment, catch myself and say, why would I make that assumption that she knows that? Like, she's coming at this as a parent, not as a professional. Or the other way around. I assume maybe because a parent hasn't been in the DD system or has no experience that they don't know a lot about it. And then I find out, no, you've been exploring maybe with other parents or a parent group or other, you've learned all of this and you don't need me to, be explaining this in detail because you're an expert in your own right. The tendency for professionals to be seen as the experts, but really families and self-advocates are the experts in how the DD system works because they're the ones at the end of the care system, right? So they can tell us whether it's working or not. We can have lots of thoughts about how great of a job we're doing, but if families and self-advocates don't feel like the experience they're having is great, then our perception of our great job doesn't really matter, right? There's a concern that it takes too much time to provide family-centered care. I ran into that in the healthcare system all the time. Megan, we're not going to do family-centered rounds today. We don't have enough time. We have too many patients today. We don't have enough time. And absolutely, I see that in the developmental disability system, especially around planning and in issues related to short staffing. We don't have enough staff to do some of the things that you want to do, which, you know what? You don't have enough staff. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. There isn't enough staff to do some of these things. We have limited resources. Right. And then there's lack of experience. I hear what you're saying about including families as advisors, but I'm not comfortable with it because I've never done it and I don't quite know what you're asking me to do. So we hear that sometimes. So what does it look like when things start to work well? Here's some examples. They work in partnership with families to define goals systemically and the support needs that need to happen individually. Privacy is protected, respected. Families and self-advocates are involved in decision-making at all levels, not just about their own supports and services. And I would circle that one because that's a good sign that a system is moving in the right direction when you see that happening. Communications consistent, open, supported, and welcomed. And I highlighted this one because it's so important. Constructive feedback is not only welcomed, but it's invited. And so going back to that, I only get a phone call when things aren't going well. Systems that were really family-centered are going to have built into them a way for families to give feedback on a regular basis about anything. And so that can look a lot of different ways and it has to be built a lot of different ways. Sometimes that's just a box on the table that says, hey, tell us your thoughts. Sometimes it's meeting as an advisory group or a parent group the way you do and asking very pointed questions about experiences. Sometimes it's one-on-one qualitative interviews over the phone, where you're asking in-depth questions about experiences and quality. But those types of things, number one, lead to really positive change, but also build relationships with families. When you say you're a partner, with the system, and then you do those things, families say, oh, I see, you mean it. You really do want to hear what I have to say. And sometimes families feel like really the only time they're getting an opportunity to talk about the care or support they're getting in the system is when there's a problem with their loved one. And you want to move past that type of system into a system that really invites family feedback in lots of different ways, and then shares what families had to say. And then lastly, supports and services are easy to understand. So any way we can break it down so that families feel like I can learn about how a support is delivered and it's not completely overwhelming to me and it makes sense to me, then we've built a system that's a little bit more family-centered. And so talking about that, I like to spend time on, do family experiences and perspectives align with what providers will say? And this to me is one of the most interesting things about family-centered care. So in the healthcare system, you know, if a family was having a certain experience, and I would say to the bedside nurse, tell me a little bit about how you think it is going with this family. One of the easiest ways for me to tell what path we were on is, were their perspectives and experiences on, you know, completely different, or was there a great deal of alignment? Maybe they weren't going, things weren't going well. Maybe they weren't seeing eye to eye. Maybe decisions were being made that they weren't comfortable with, but they both saw the same process versus seeing completely different processes. You know, I'll sometimes, you know, talk to a provider and I'll say, you know, here's what the family is feeling. And they'll say, I had no idea. That wasn't on my radar at all. Like I literally had no idea that they were feeling that way. And so there was no ill intent. They just didn't know that that was happening, which goes back to building that system where you're inviting feedback so that families feel like I can tell you this and you're not going to feel defensive about it. You're not going to feel like I'm attacking you. I can give you this feedback. But the truth of the matter is that goes both ways, right? Providers also have to be honest with families about what they need from them in the system. And sometimes that's a difficult piece of the puzzle. So this is from Kathy Snow, and she is an advocate that some of you have probably heard of, but I really enjoyed kind of her perception of what families need in a system. One is kind of acknowledgement that needs change over time. And I think this is so true in the developmental disability system, right? Like what my daughter needs at 22 is going to be so drastically different than what she needs at 60. And how are we building a system that looks at her lifespan and makes sure that she's cared for appropriately across the spectrum? Families need to be encouraged to express their own needs and know that that's okay. Dignity, respect for their individual choices. You know, we don't always see eye to eye about why families make certain choices for their loved one, but we certainly respect their ability to make those choices. Respect of cultural and economic, spiritual differences. We encourage families to use natural community resources, but if we encourage that, we have to be careful that we don't expect it, meaning it's not the families don't want to access those natural community resources. They don't know they're there. You know, a good example is when I am talking to a family, they're having trouble with one of the many things, you know, you can run into on a regular basis. And I say, well, have you reached out to your Center for Independent Living? 90% of the time, they don't know what I'm talking about. They've never heard of the Center for Independent Living. They have no education about what that is. They don't know how to get in contact with them, but they're such a great resource, right? And so finding a way to make sure families have access to those natural community resources that can help them. Supports and services that are easy to navigate, and equal access no matter where you live. So, you know, in the state of Illinois, I'll be honest, if I'm talking to a family in a certain county or a certain region of the state, I will know right off the bat that they have access to fewer resources, fewer services, and that isn't going to change for them. That if they don't live in a different area, if they don't move, they're stuck with much fewer choices than families in other areas of the state. And the way I choose to handle that is just acknowledging it, because I think it's important just to be honest about, you know, in certain areas of the state, you're going to wait 3 months for a SILA, and in other areas of the state, you're going to wait 3 years for a SILA. And the reality of resource differences, and population and how that drives services and things like that. But that makes a big difference in the developmental disability system.
Megan, there's a question in the chat box that might have been answered by your example, but wanted to know what an example of a natural community resource was.
Sure. So a natural community resource would be, the way I often think of it is, you've got kind of a family, imagine like 3 pillars. You've got a family, friends being one pillar. And certainly there's some community resources there, but really family and friend relationships. And on the other end, you've got more formalized developmental disability supports and governmental supports like SSI, things like that. And in the middle, you have natural community supports. And that's things that maybe there's not a structured system to access, but they can be super helpful. So it can be things like Centers for Independent Living, special recreation programs, park districts, things that can make a big difference to a family, but they're not naturally built into the DD system. So families are, and really it kind of comes down to, do we have a community where inclusion is valued? Because everybody with or without a disability should be able to access some of those things. But a lot of times families immediately go from school system to formalized developmental disability supports. Like it's a jump from here to here, and we jump over that middle level of supports. And there's some good resources there for families, and they often don't know about them. And that's not their fault that they don't know about them. We don't educate them. The school system doesn't talk about it at all. They just immediately jump to DD supports. And there's a role for both of those things. So that's something to consider, or at least to talk to families about. But the other piece of that, I guess, would be, as I'm talking to you, can you make a list of natural community supports? And if you can't, and you're well embedded into the DD system, I can't expect a family coming out of high school, for example, into kind of early DD supports to be able to do that either. So we're just not doing a great job of identifying those supports and telling families about them. And so this is a kind of a quick snapshot of how you can start thinking about family-centered care in the DD system. Looking at how families and self-advocates are included in system development, talking about families and self-advocates as process design, protocol design. I'll give you an example. It's easier to give you a concrete example in healthcare that pops into my mind right now, but for example, we had a huge system change around whether or not we should have families present for CPR. Is it a good idea to have families present for CPR or not? And if we did, what's the process? And we could make that decision, right? We could have decided for ourselves, well, what do I know if it's a good idea for a family to be present for CPR? I need to ask the families who have been present for CPR, right? How they feel about that and what impact that had on them. And so thinking about things like that, all the way down to, you're going to do a redesign of, you're going to build these new buildings, Lori, and can families come in and look at, well, what are the rooms going to look like? How are roommates going to interact based on the setup of rooms, things like that. Families giving feedback on that kind of stuff, which is very concrete, but very useful. And really thinking always about, how have we invited the voice of the families in? And then it's also deciding in our mind that the voice that they bring is really, really important to the process, sort of so valuable that we can't move forward without it. And then you go from systemic change to sort of boots on the ground service, how families can be involved. And that's mentoring to other families, helping develop programs, family groups. We often have families participate as kind of reviewers of curriculum. That can be really helpful. Things like that. You had families very involved, for example, in the sex ed curriculum that went, many of you probably saw family voice, and that can be helpful. And then you also have families as supports, self-advocates in planning and design of their individual supports, what their person-centered plan looks like, decision-making and how things rolled out. And that can be something small, Lori meeting with a group of residents and saying, hey, we have 3 choices to do this particular program. Tell us what you think, right? Or something really big, like, hey, we're building this new supported housing complex and we're considering, how service is going to be delivered. Here are our choices. What do you think? But whatever that looks like, you want to do it in a way that is meaningful to families. And then lastly, and again, the thing I keep coming back to, because to me, it's the missing piece, is families participating in the evaluation of their supports. You know, how often are families asked, is this working? And if it is not working, what should we do differently? And that can be really important. Yep.
There's another question in the chat that asked, how does family participation tie into the settings rule?
Well, you know, you'd have to have me have the settings rule in front of me to be able to give you some examples of that. So how about I address that later when I can pull it up and look at it, because I don't want to give you bad information on that. But certainly family participation and the settings rule are tied together, and that there's pieces of that that really looks at privacy, individualization, things that could really make a big difference for self-advocates and families. So here's a continuum, and you all can only decide kind of where you are on this continuum. So the lowest level of family-centered care, important but low, is just giving good support. So an individual with disabilities getting high quality supports. Okay, that's kind of the bottom line, right? We expect that. Then we go up one level. Families are invited to share information and preferences on a regular basis. Okay. We say, okay, that's working, right? We've designed a system where we're inviting families, and it can be, hey, we send out a survey once a month and we get families' feedback on certain processes. I wouldn't generally have you send out and ask feedback on 10 processes. I would say one process at a time so that family can dig into that one piece. Then you go to families on family advisory boards, self-advocates on self-advocate advisory boards, or those two groups mixed together. Then we jump into families reviewing curriculum and processes and offering feedback. And this is a specially kind of designed group of family advisors, and I can talk to you about that. And then lastly, families participate in education of staff, hiring. They participate as members of the board of directors, and they're always included in policy change. And so this sort of will tell you how family-centered a particular system is, how far in a particular system goes. And as I said, the most common ways we see families involved are educators. And I'll be honest about the education piece. This is, to me, the easiest piece. Number one, because staff like to hear family experiences and families like to share experiences. There's nothing terribly threatening about having a panel of families come in and talk about things that have worked really well for them and suggestions they would have to change. But I would say this, if you choose to do that, you want to always prepare families so that you have some boundaries around what the discussion is going to be about. Families and advisors, I would consider you all advisors right now. I suspect if any of you offered feedback to Lori right now on what she said about the construction project, for example, she would openly listen to that. So I would consider you advisors in your role right now. Volunteers, special project volunteers, supports for individuals in Scylla group homes, for example, mentors to other families, and then reviewers of process and policy. And that may be where you have the biggest opportunity for growth because it's just a new system. Now because I'm having to use this PDF in a way I don't really like. So here's a couple of examples, kind of, I think, low-hanging fruit. Allowing a self-advocate and family to define who their family is. So instead of the system deciding this qualifies as family versus this, you ask, tell me who your family is. That's a simple, like super easy way to empower somebody to define what their support network really looks like versus us deciding it's mom and guardian and grandma, and that's who we sort of define. We want them to be able to define that themselves. Another option, family or self-advocate is invited by their PSW to design a system of communication that meets their needs. So I could tell you lots of different ways that families could offer feedback, but the easiest way to design a system that works is to just go to families and say, we want to be more transparent about what's happening. Tell us how you would like to receive information from us. Super simple way of families saying, now you have to be ready for 10 of your families to say, I only want emails. And 10 of your families to say, oh, I'd love to have a Zoom call once a month and you update us on changes. Some families will say, that's not really my thing. I don't really want to hear those things. But that kind of comes to the heart of, okay, how do you design a system that meets all of those needs? Another very easy one, if you're thinking low hanging fruit, go ahead, Lori.
I was gonna say, Megan, do you want me to take over the pictures? Because I can page through it
Click
instead of
them?
having to
That
scroll.
would be great. They're totally not, it's not agreeing with me for
Yeah.
some reason.
I'm
Okay.
gonna do that now then.
Do you need me to stop sharing to let you do it? Or can I leave it?
I think that it'll let me share now. All right, is it letting me, can you see my screen now?
Not yet. There we go.
Is that the right screen?
It is. Oh, look, you have buttons. That's nice. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Can you go down one? There we go. A really easy one, and especially when I hear Lori talking about all this construction that's going to happen, is facility walkthroughs. So we would do a facility walkthrough every 6 months in the hospital setting, where we would have families walk all of the floors, go into all of the rooms, and say, what jumps out at you? Tell us what you see, because they always see things that we don't see. And that was so helpful. And they would just carry a clipboard with them. They would take notes, and we would gather all of that information, and we would sit down and think, okay, how do we change this environment to address some of the things that are jumping out to them that maybe aren't what we want them to be? Curriculum, having families look at certain curriculum, especially as you make curriculum changes, you consider different pieces of kind of intervention that you're going to do with people living in SILAs or in community day services, talking to them about, hey, we're thinking about making these changes. Can I give you this 10-page curriculum and have you look at it? Can you give me some feedback on what you think about it? But be prepared if families come back and say, I don't like this curriculum at all. And that might happen. And then thinking, okay, well, what type of curriculum do we need to look for then? Next slide, Lori. Oh, Lori, can you go down one? There we go. So here's a good place to start if you're not sure where to start. One is having them, just as you said, evaluate current programming, getting some feedback from families about what they're seeing, things they'd like change, and sometimes just a broad overview of programming. One thing to always ask staff, I think, is how do we value family feedback? Because sometimes administratively it's quite valued, but on the ground with providers who are working directly with individuals, maybe it's not as valued. So talking to staff about how do we show families we value feedback can be helpful. And then once families tell us what they think, what do we do about it? That's a question. And part of thinking about these things is you don't want to start a process that you can't follow through on. You want to make sure that culturally your group is ready to actually dive into some of this. Next slide, Lori. So let's say you're going now, somebody just asked, I noticed in the chat, how do you get on the family advisory board? Well, I think you all are calling your group a parent group. Lori, maybe you all would call it an advisory board. I don't know, but an advisory board officially would be that a group is meeting on a regular schedule. It doesn't need to be monthly, but a regular schedule. And they're regularly addressing issues that a provider is working on. So not necessarily things that aren't going well, just across the board updates on what providers are working on and where families can give feedback. And one of the things that makes the biggest difference in this is having advocates at the table, good advisors who are ready to participate in that role. And so here's what you would be looking for. And I would evaluate yourself on this as well, because this is something I had to look at myself for. Go ahead, Lori.
No, I was just going to say, so this group has 4 pillars or 4 functions that they decided on together when we first started meeting. Advisory is one of them. So we have advisory, advocacy, support for each other through the social gatherings, and education, which is learning. And so we have like each month is one of those things, and we have a calendar
Okay.
that we put out. And so we may not be using the advisory function to the best possible, but we have come to this group to ask for input and guidance around a variety of different things. Like, for example, we talked about whether or not we should require vaccinations for staff. We talked about the sexual education curriculum and how that would go out, and talked about input from that and more things than that. But those are the things that are rising to my head. But it's not every month. It's 4 pillars, so we do one of the pillars every month. So
Okay. That's amazing. And actually those 2 examples are examples I'll steal from you. But particularly the COVID vaccine, what a great one to grab a hold of, because it would be easy not to ask people on that, right? Like that would be easier not to ask, because it's going to be controversial. You're going to get lots of different pieces of feedback that you might not be able to do anything with. So that's an excellent example. Thank you for telling me that. Well, so based on that, I think you all can kind of look at different kind of what you bring to the table as advisors. And some of the things that I would tell you that might be useful are, can you see issues globally? So I ran into many times, somebody would call me up and say, I would like to be on the advisory board. And I'd say, oh, tell me more about that. And what they would tell me is their experience, and often it wasn't good. And so what they were really needing was a parent support group where they could process their experiences. An advisor is giving broad guidance on a lot of different issues, and they have to be able to see beyond what their experience is. If you get an advisor who's stuck in whatever experience has maybe negatively impacted them, it's very difficult to move that conversation. And so that's one red flag that I see pretty common as advisors, which I totally get. Families have difficult experiences. They want to share those experiences. It's just not this forum that you want to have that in. Families are open to projects, but know that may change, because goals systemically can change, right? So, Lori may bring a particular project to the group, and then 2 months from now come back and say, hey, we really looked at that. I know we dug in on that, but we've had to change course. And the group has to be able to go, okay, that's okay. That's where we're at. Feel comfortable sharing their experiences. So not being stuck on their experiences, but you have to be willing to share experiences that may put you in a position of vulnerability, because system change happens when you share those experiences. And then I think pretty importantly, you have to understand whatever the goals and mission and vision of your organization is. As advisors have to be well aware of what the system's trying to build, so that they can kind of align themselves with that piece. Next slide, we're almost there, and then I want to talk about some of your questions. Here's some of the most common mistakes that we see in building family advisory groups. One is we don't tell staff enough about what we're doing, and then staff start to feel defensive or frustrated about why family voices are brought to the table and they don't know what's happening. Asking family advisors for feedback on things they cannot change. So, I don't really want to know that you don't like the layout of this building if I've already built the building, right? Can't change it. So what's the point? You want to ask for feedback on things that something can be done about. You want to make sure that the families are interested in the topics you're talking about. It's completely fine for an advisor to say, you know what, I'm going to be hands off on this particular topic because I have no interest in this whatsoever. And you might have 3 people who are really, really interested in facility design who want to be a part of that, who really want to offer their feedback. So pick topics, match them well with advisors. It's maybe another problem is you get advisor feedback, but it's too late. I cannot tell you the number of times we did this. I would have a manager maybe of a unit come to me and say, I need some family feedback on this. I would go get them the feedback they wanted. I'd bring it to them and they would say, oh, it's too late though. we decided to just go ahead and move forward. And I thought, oh, you don't do that. Don't ask for advisor feedback when you're so far in the process that change is not going to happen. You want to make sure that families who take their time and volunteer their time to do this, so you all, that they get feedback about what their input was used for. So you gave us this guidance. This is what we did with it. Even if you don't take the guidance, because they're not going to take the guidance all the time, because that's just not always how it's going to work. The system isn't families tell everybody how it has to be and then it has to be that way. The system is families give their guidance, and that ties in systemically to what the provider's doing, and then they make a decision. And sometimes it's in line with what families need, and sometimes it isn't. But the key part of that is there was discussion and family feedback, so that the provider knows what families are looking for. And then lastly, just not being clear about roles and expectations. And that's just an easy thing to do. And I will say it's even easier in a group like yours, where you're doing several different things. You're providing support to each other. You're doing some education. You're acting as an advisor. You kind of like, what role am I sitting in today? Just the awareness of that can be helpful. Okay, next slide, Lori. So just to jump back around, if you have an interest in this at all and you want to start, here's some easy things. You guys have already built an advisory board. Pick a project, pick something small, pick a curriculum that's about to roll out. Pick a walkthrough of the facility. These are easy things. Do a survey of families, decide, okay, we're going to pick 50 families. We're going to send out a survey. We're going to ask, and you all as an advisory group can decide what questions do we need to ask to get some good family feedback. And then talk about current culture as it relates to family voice. How do we use families now? How are families included at the table? And where are we excluding families in decision-making? Next slide. Here's some tools that you can use. They have great tools on here that you will really find useful. Life Course Tools is one of my favorites, that can give you some things if you're thinking, we would like to, go ahead and do a little bit of this, expand what we're already doing. This would be a place to look. And with that, Lori, the only thing that's the next slide is just my contact information. I'm happy to tell you what that is. Let's see. I'm reading your questions right now. Oh, I love the emergency manual piece. That would be a great project. And it's a good project with boundaries, like it has a beginning and an ending, and you have a product at the end, and that's always a good place to start.
Well, and you said in what, today or yesterday's some ARC webinar I was on, where the home-based people need to have a backup plan. So that's, everyone needs to have a backup plan.
Yeah.
So all that would come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was part of the discussion, Kathy, that came up. I don't know if you asked that question about, things fall through at the provider level all the time too. And what do we do in that case? And should they be writing backup plans as well? And really, I thought that was an excellent question, because families, our PSWs fall through, but so do DSPs or other things. So yes, I appreciate that question.
And so,
And I was kind of looking for something that's a little bit more more personal that I could update from home too. For example, what size does my daughter wear? What's her current meds? Updating that, which changes all the time. So I know there is a plan within her plan with AID, but not as detailed as I think it needs to be.
do you have a letter of intent put together?
Exactly what I was going to say, Kathy.
I'm sorry, but
A letter of intent.
for what
Google
purpose?
it, get the form. It's every stinking detail about your kid you could write down. So if you got hit by a bus, I could come over to your house and know where it is, and I could take care of your kid because you've spelled out everything. We all need to do that.
Yeah.
And
And
update it.
honestly, you'll feel so much better after that's done. There's just
It's
something
hard.
about it's on paper.
Yep.
So it's a letter of intent.
Yes. Just
Okay.
Google it. You'll find some different forms that are available online. You can do it yourself. You don't need lawyers to do it. It's just all the nitpicky little details about your kid that will help someone else get through the day with your kid. And it's very important.
Thank you.
And you
On
can,
the internet, or do you have it, do you have that form from AID?
Now, you can just get on the internet. There's a bunch of different kinds out there. Just look at a couple to see how they set up the questions and what do you feel like answering. And it takes a long time to do.
Mhm.
the,
There is a
Right.
really good resource if you all are
Yeah.
interested and you feel like you have time. Teresa or Carol, the ARC of the US, so not the Illinois ARC, the ARC of the US has what's called the Center for Future Planning. And it's free. You get in there and it holds all your records. You know, you put that stuff in and it holds onto it electronically. And it has great resources. It's, I think, underused because people don't know about it, but it's the ARC of the US Center for Future Planning.
Thank you so much.
So Kathy, you're saying you fill that out, you don't, do you just keep it yourself or did you share it with AID or?
Share it with anybody. Give it to AID, although with our guys in the house, they should know a lot about them anyway. It would be like my friend. I would do a digital copy and she's holding on to it. So she could come over to the house and jump in and be able to do that. So yeah, have your own hard copy, send a friend a digital copy, some relative, AID, if you want to really get down to the, but you know, our guys are in the house. They should know enough about our guys by now that they can get through it, which is very nice that we've got the agency to lean on to take care of them, but there's still going to be, you know, my friend is my backup person that Matthew knows her. We don't see her very often and she'll be able to come in and grab that and, or I give it to her digitally and she'll know what doctors to call and all that.
So my
Or to
question
even
is,
call
could
AID
AI
because you
could
need, because you need information from them.
my question is, couldn't AID have that information available? So that we don't have to go to the, you know, ARC of the US? I mean, that just seems like something that AID would want to have filled out a letter of intent for all of their clients and stuff. I mean, the family should have an input here. And how would AID know how to act if they don't have that?
well, I mean, I think that you have, I mean, there's a person-centered plan and we would continue acting the same way that we had acted before you were there as after you were gone. But if there are things that like, you know, that you do at home or ways that you spend money or things that you balance, right, that we don't do, right, those would be the things that you would need to either have someone else that you knew how to do that for. I've also seen some things that I don't know if we do it here or not, but that are like almost like a flip book about the person, so that even if somebody new comes into the home, you know, like here's what I like, and there's a picture of what the person likes and what they like to eat and what they like to do and where they like to go, you know, and how they like to communicate and what makes them mad or what makes them happy, you know. I've seen some of those neat ones before too.
Yeah, Matthew has one in his house on his dresser for if anybody's got a question or you know what not to say to them, it's in that book.
Yeah.
And is this something that the family produced on their own, or is this something that there is a format that AID may have that the family could use as a format?
I mean, AID uses the person-centered plan that's created by the case manager, who is the independent service coordination entity, right? And then we write the implementation plan for those pieces, but like anything that we're not now responsible for, right? We wouldn't know what else you wanted, right? We don't have that set up, although, you know, as people, you know, age or their families age, or they're going to have a change in, you know, let's say,
Yes.
you know, who's going to be the guardian whenever something happens to you, you should be working with us in order to let us know that. But I don't know of any formal document that we have around that, although I'm not delivering service every day, so I'm not the person to ask. I mean, we should ask Stephanie, and I could check on that, and we could talk about it at the picnic in a month around that. But you know, we have to me, it's a strange relationship between the ISC, the family, and the service provider. That isn't always the smoothest transition of information between all of them, right? So you know, ways that we could you know, work on improving that while we're still complying with what we're required to comply with, and not doing what we're not allowed to do, right? Which is to write the service plan, even though we know the person the best, right? Because we spend 24 hours a day with them, you know, 365 days a week. That's just not how, you know, the system here works, you know, in Illinois. So just working around that. But I will find out, you know, I do know, I mean, we've done a variety of things. We've got a lot of folks that like don't have any family anymore, you know, and we have transitioned into doing, you know, different parts of the support that we might not have done before. You know, we try to ensure that as people are aging, that they are able to age in place and, you know, stay in their homes and have hospice or other, you know, things in their home. We recently had a gentleman who had been with us for many, many years, living in his own apartment, who had his whole plan for how he wanted to, you know, have treatment, and how he didn't want to have treatment, and how he wanted, who he wanted to help him, which his family was gone. And so it was actually a staff member who they asked, the staff member wanted to do that. We separated, you know, they had no duties with the person. They were simply their support in terms of, you know, power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney and such. And then they had their end of life celebration planned, and how all that wanted. And, you know, it was sad to lose the person, but it was neat to be able to see that he lived his entire life the way that he chose to live it, and he ended it and then celebrated it the way that he chose. And not everybody can say that. So, I mean, we do, you know, the things we can, but there are plenty of impediments and barriers to that. So the things that, you know, we can do to try to work through those.
Well, my question is there something that's sort of set up like that, a form or a protocol that it's like a starting point if nothing else?
Carol, can
that
you see the
either-
links that I just put in?
Links in there that.
You see
Yeah,
those links?
Good
well,
outline.
Here's a couple.
I can't copy them all down right now because it comes on and comes off so fast. So no, I can't.
If you
Oh, I can email it to you.
Just
Okay.
click on the link and it takes you right there, and they're really good.
Yeah, if you open up the chat, what I always do in these things, Carol, because they do, you know, like when they click off, they're gone. Open up the chat, click on them, and then I just leave them minimized, and then I go to them after the, you know, after the thing is over with, and then I save them in my favorites, or I look at them and decide I don't like it or I do like it, you know, and then
Okay.
either save them or not. So
Okay,
that's a way to do that as well.
okay.
I've-
now I just
I've heard the
lost you.
letter. I have heard the letter of intent referenced in I've seen it referenced in iPad Unite, and they do also have archived information, that sort of thing. So you might want to look into that as well, and that might give you different kinds of things. But I gather that they're highly personal, and so while it would be really great for AID to have that, I think just as much, you know, family, as you said, Kathy, family, friends, maybe your lawyer, maybe, you know, all those people have access to that, and it has to be updated. You decide when, on their birthday or yearly or whatever, because things change.
You know, for me,
Megan, I
I have
Megan, I
things
wanna ask a
legally set
question.
up. Go ahead.
Megan, I want to ask a question sort of about your family-centered presentation. You know, it really strikes me that it is such a tall order for a lot of agencies to sort of move from the traditional way where services are designed by the professional staff. Are there, you know, and I love your presentation. I guess I'm wondering, are there checklists or you know, guidance documents that would be available to an agency like AID so that we could kind of measure where are we in family centeredness? Because I'm guessing we're family centered in some ways, but not very family centered in other ways. You know, and when I look at your list of, you know, families involved in decisions at all levels, consistent communication, regular feedback being invited, I'm not sure I see those consistently being practiced. And, you know, so are there checklists that would help an agency evaluate where it is and move along?
So there's actually, the best resource for family-centered care, though unfortunately a lot of it's built around healthcare because that's where it started, is the Institute for Patient and Family-Centered Care, ipfcc.org. And they do have checklists. So James, I'll go look and see what I can find in DD systems particularly. You bring up a really important point, though, that I want to emphasize. Because DD systems haven't historically operated this way, some of the things that you don't see, it's only because staff doesn't know that there's any expectation of that, right? Because we haven't set up that expectation. And so it really is a system change of helping staff on the ground level know that you're going to be integrating family voices in a way you haven't before. And that's going to be a big change for them.
And the other thing that is always an impediment is the funding system and their expectations.
Yeah.
You know, don't necessarily have those expectations or that ability built in. So it takes like working around the edges and thinking outside of the box. And we do every year, and it's certainly not every quarter or every month, but every year we do a stakeholders, you know, survey that goes to families and consumers of all of our services that people can fill out. I would say that I don't find it a very fulfilling document because it doesn't ask a lot of in-depth questions, although it has open-ended questions. It's more of a Likert scale, and then it has some ability for some open-ended questions, you know. And to me, I think also when I think about you know, I need, like, we all need guidance, right, on like what is, you know, what does open communication mean to you? Because you know, these meetings are an effort to have open communications. You know, our newsletters are different, you know, our different things are efforts to do that. So are there different ways that people would like to see that? And really something I'd love to get back to here is that we had a quality improvement director at one point. And we still do quality improvement work, but I'd like to have someone, again, that is more focused on that could, you know, I mean, like, I mean, our issue is, again, not enough workforce to do, you know, all the things that, you know, need to be done and looked at in order. You know, I mean, I look at our equity and inclusion work as part of this, right? You know, because we're trying to figure out how to include everyone in processes here in the community and, you know, in their homes and, you know, all the things. And it's like, just how do you, I don't know, help people to see how all those connect, but also, you know, have more time and focus to put into it. Cause I think, you know, we've been talking about this group, you and I, Jim, you know, and how we like engage, you know, more people and get people involved, you know, and every month at this time, I think, you know, I am gonna do these 50 things. And then like, then it's next month all of a sudden, and I haven't done those 50 things that I was going to do to try to, you know, engage more parents and guardians or whatever it is that I'm going to do. I'm not saying this as an excuse. I'm just saying the world at large is not set up for us at this moment to have a lot of time to, build into these things. So what ways, I mean, I would love to see, is there something that this group wants to do, that would be, do you want to design a better, feedback tool, right? Or I don't know, whatever it is that is most important to you out of that, list of things at this minute that we could, focus on, and then do one thing, right? Because that's how you eat the elephant, is one bite at a time, right? And keep working towards something.
Yeah, I think that's where the challenge really rests. For me, an example is the recently redesigned day program at ETC, where, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, Lori, so correct me if I am, but there was no parent or family guidance in what would a redesigned CDS program at ETC look like. The only way that I knew that the program was being redesigned is that I serve on the board of directors and happen to have an inside track.
Right.
There's been virtually no communication that I'm aware of to families about that.
Yeah.
So I think that might be a really good example for your staff, Lori, to sort of deconstruct, maybe in conversation with someone like Megan, and a group of parents about, so how do we begin to move as an agency? And I'm sure there would be other examples that might come up as well.
Yeah, that's the first thing that I thought of when she was saying that. But to be defensive a little bit, it was also during part of the heights of COVID that we were looking at how to improve that system, and trying to get people back to CDS and trying to make it better. But I totally agree that I was like, yeah, that would have been great. We should have had, and Andrea is totally a person that's very much about, getting input from other places. So again, I think part of it is, it hasn't been built into the expectation DNA, right? So it's like, how do we keep the culture, keep moving the culture of the organization, along as we're, trying to keep doing the job we're supposed to be doing, and have the time to, keep changing. And again, that's always when we talk about the culture of the organization, I'm always thinking about like our equity and inclusion work, because it's so across all of these different areas, right? How more people are included, not less people, right? How we get more input, more feedback, more understanding. And like for example, when we're thinking about the potential tear down and redesign of the Keeler Center, in my mind, it's a very inclusive process where we intend to have charrettes, or whatever you want, fancy name you want to call them, where the family members and clients and professionals, all can come and talk about like what is needed for that building, and how would it look, and what would the features be, and what would we like to see, and then along with the architect, help design a building that is going to meet the needs of the people that we serve there, because we know that it doesn't meet the needs now, right? So yeah, I totally agree with you, Jim.
Can I jump in really quick, Lori? I do want to point out for you guys that the fact that you're even having this conversation, Lori's one of the most progressive folks that I've ever gotten to know in DD services. And the fact that you guys exist, you're here, you're having these conversations, I feel pretty confident in telling you, you're one of the very few groups that are having these conversations. So you have the ability to sort of test the water and do some new things. And, in this very under-resourced service system, bring families in a way that other people haven't. But you guys are really groundbreakers, and are thinking in a way that the system is barely thinking. So I appreciate that you're here even talking about it, and that Lori invites these ideas in, because I just don't see it other places. So I'm saying that to say, go and do the things, and, try some of this stuff out, and, all recognizing that the service system is so poorly resourced, and Lori's trying to keep everybody happy and alive at the same time that we're trying to do some of these more progressive things. So I really appreciate you, Lori, and I appreciate your group, because I think it's just exciting that you have an interest.
Megan, what just bubbled up in the chat is that you're going to be invited back to do this very presentation for all the staff at AID. So keep that in mind.
I would love that. And I will come with some checklists, Jim, and I'll be ready to go.
I even wrote
That
it
would be
down
great.
like when she was presenting, Sue, so we're on the same track, because I was like, oh yeah, we need, although all of the staff is 600 people, so that doesn't usually happen, but all of leadership, certainly in our, from our management levels, you know, because again, this is towards culture shift, right? You know, and talking about, you know, what people can do, you know, not what they can't do, and being helpful and not hurtful and some of those things. So, you know, one of the things I did write down, you know, and again, I'm always try to be, as completely honest as I can with you all, you know, is that, you know, all of our workforce issues compound the ability, you know, to do, you know, any of these innovative things. And so, and our funding source and the way that they require things to be done also compounds it. So we always have to be I feel almost sometimes like you have to be slick, right? You have to figure out how to work around the system instead of in the system, you know, I mean, in order, and that takes even more energy, right, than it takes to do something within the system. So if we all continue to give each other grace, you know, that's been my word of the year this year, that I've been trying to do for myself, for staff, for people in the community, for things that, you know, make you want to pull your hair out. Think, you know, I really don't know what's happening in the background for that person. So I just need to give all of us a little bit of grace, but I need to look at these comments, because people are asking some questions, I think.
Lori, I put a question in, if you can elaborate on what's happening with your Elgin Day program.
Yeah, I will try to tell you the best I can, and then I will then I can get you further information if you want. But when we you know, during COVID had to close all of our day programs as required by the governor, then when we began to bring people back, at that time there wasn't, we had less and less work to do on the work line, the more traditional kind of community day service. And so we made the difficult decision of deciding that we were only going to do work at the line work at our Aurora location, and knowing the way that the settings rule and all things are trying to open up more opportunity for people. We went and we created a director of programming position in our person who has a background in education and writing plans for people with disabilities in the educational system, and is an autism specialist. Became our director of programming, which is really great because she is incredibly innovative and very very positive. She believes and knows that all people are capable of whatever they want to do. So, so she began putting together a curriculum that would be more kind of like a high school or a college style, where you might be in one of the settings doing a craft project, and then in an hour and a half you move to the next thing that you're interested in, which might be the cooking class. Then you might go to the special rec, Northern Illinois special rec, you know, to work out or run or swim. You might go to a baseball game, although that didn't happen very often, at the Cougars. The Cougars are in the Kane County Cougars, are in the middle of the county, and we sometimes are able through some of our volunteer clubs to get some tickets to that. You know, volunteering in the community is part of what people do. So I can't give you everything that they do, but everything's designed so that it's not just like go sit in this one classroom and do this one thing all the time, that you're able to move to different modules or days of doing things.
Is the program in Elgin open?
Pardon me?
Is the program in Elgin running yet or
Yes,
no?
yes, it is.
Right.
Yep.
I
Yep,
have
it's open, and we have started doing much of the curriculum, and we also have some supplies and materials to do separate classrooms and break up kind of the bigger what had been the work floor. We've got ordered, and so hopefully we'll be here. We got a grant. Christy, our great grant writer, was able to get us a grant in order to get some, you know, not cubicles, but, you know, nice partitions and things so that we can break those off. So, you know, those are the things that we are doing. So we're doing multiple things that Sue put in there, a chat about community integration. We are doing more things in the community, but you know, we're at high risk again in the counties. So, you know, I mean, we keep trying to balance that and trying to keep people as safe as possible. And we still keep having, you know, okay, these 5 people now have COVID, and now this group over here does now, you know, I mean, like it just keeps kind of rolling, and thank God, you know, 99% of the people that we support have, you know, their full vaccinations, and we haven't had anybody, you know, knock on wood, that has been severely ill. But this last round of COVID has been more, has had more
It's been more rampant.
symptoms, that's the word. God, my word would not come out. That has had worse symptoms than like you know, December and January, we had a whole bunch of people sick, but they weren't sick, right? You know what I mean? Like they were just like maybe a cold. This round seems to be you can before Megan's got to go, you guys. So everybody say thank you very much.
Hey, Megan,
Thank
thank
you. I'm
you
so sorry, but
much.
they're not going to leave me alone any longer.
Yeah, go have a glass of
I
wine.
appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Megan.
Talk to you
Thank you
soon.
so much.
Thanks, Lori. Bye-bye.
We'll be in touch.
Okay.
But anyway, so you know, we're just trying to balance all of that, but we are doing more things with, you know, the special recreation, with going, we've got people volunteering again, you know, going to the libraries, some of those kinds of things. You know, probably not to the full extent that we had been before COVID, but it's still kind of a, you know, see how things go today, and then, you know, how things go tomorrow and what we're doing. So I want to look at, see if there's other questions in here. Let's see. So somebody was saying, Sue, you said, put a comment in here in the chat that find a way to share with parents and guardians, like a newsletter or email. We have a really hard time having parents' emails. For some reason, they change all the time, and staff are, you know, but we can definitely, you're asking specifically about the Elgin programs, right? About the changes to that? Yep.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, because I think some of these concepts that we heard today are not familiar to a lot of parents and guardians, and just, it would be great if I found, okay, I've got some background, but I found that listening to Megan, I understood what was going on, and I thought that would be really great for as many parents as possible. And then maybe we have a better group to draw from to do advisory or whatever. And along the same lines, because I was just saying, are volunteers able to come into ETC? You know, I don't know, and we've talked about this before, is it possible to have some sort of activities at ETC that a DSP is there, but a couple of parents come in, and now you have 3 adults who can be assisting and facilitating, and, you know, I don't know if that's doable. Those are just the sorts of things I'm thinking And
Yeah.
then parents go, oh, I want to be involved in that. And then
Right.
you've got buy-in.
Right, and that absolutely is possible, and we do stuff like that with our volunteer coordinator, who is Maureen, here in our Aurora office, and I can't tell you what all the requirements are. As long as you're not left alone with a person with a developmental disability, even though you have a child with a developmental disability, we're not allowed to leave you alone with someone who's not a trained DSP, right? But you can always come in to a house to help cook, or to keep people entertained while dinner is being cooked, or to help people participate in dinner, or play games on a game night, or to come to ETC. So we can certainly talk about if there's more ways this group want to do it, and we do record these as long as I remember, and Doug always puts them on our website, and they're available for anybody to listen to on our website, and so we could start looking at how Jim and I have struggled. We have talked a lot, and I know we've asked you guys and about how we get the information out to people, and we have sent, I think yesterday, Doug sent out a big blast again to everybody. ETC is what we're calling the Elgin Training Center, or Elgin, the Elgin CDS. It's actually officially named the O'Shea Center, after our most previous past president and CEO, Lynn O'Shea. But it's our building on Bowes Road, where we have community day services for kind of the northern area of Kane County and Cook, and a little bit of McHenry, and whoever comes to that area. But yeah, so we're open, right, to anything in these discussions. And I think Jim made a really nice offer to me by email about trying to help get out like maybe some minutes and some other stuff from these meetings, and reminder emails like a week ahead of time or whatever, because again, I thought I had it set up within Zoom that a automatic reminder would go out to everybody, but apparently it doesn't. And then I have to go like into 50 different locations to get the list of people who are registered, in order to copy and paste them and put it into an email to send out a reminder. And then I have to back out everybody's names, because I can't just copy their email addresses. It's their whole registration. Anyway, there's probably an easier way to do it, but I am not technologically savvy enough to get it done in a very good fashion. So Jim made some offers to be a little bit helpful in that respect, and so I think we're going to try to figure out how we do that. But again, open to anything that you guys think are ideas about ways. We've sent out emails to all parents and guardians. We put stuff in our Friday Focus that goes out every Friday. We've put stuff in the actual newsletter that comes out. We have done, I had it included in a paper mailing that we did when we were first bringing back CDS, and we were talking about like the changes in visitation to SCILA and all that, where we sent out paperwork, and I had a flyer about the Family Council put in that. We've tried a lot of different things, but I think more than anything, it's word of mouth. You guys telling your peers, and them telling their peers, and encouraging people. And I wonder if I wonder if a lot of people don't use a calendar, like we make these a calendar invite when you register, and you register for the whole year. So if you don't use an online calendar, you might forget, after the initial meeting, right? Should we have a registration every month, for each meeting so that it'd be more immediate? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but
You and I, Lori, can keep talking about that. I think we got some ideas beginning. And hey, everybody, do not forget that a great networking time is our next meeting, which is next month, August, our get together. So any
Okay, I would just
other
like to add that
any
I'm
other
very-
questions?
Lori, I'd just like to add that I'm very tech savvy, so I think in the beginning I did offer to do a newsletter for the group, and I'd be happy to do that. And then there was somebody else who said that they would submit text. So feel free to reach out to me. It's something I do on my job on a normal basis anyhow.
okay. I
So,
remember you saying that now that you said it again.
yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember who said that they would submit text to me and I could put it all together and get it out, and we could set up a little, Facebook group or something like that too,
Yep.
to,
Yep, we
I'll
did
spread
talk
the word that
about,
way.
we did talk about doing a private Facebook group too as well.
yeah, so I'd be happy to do all that.
Okay.
Is
When's
next
the
month in Elgin?
Pardon?
I'm sorry, is next month in Elgin?
No, it's here in Aurora.
In Aurora, okay.
Yeah. Yep, 6 p.m. on the 25th. Everything will be provided, food and drinks. You just need to show up and be prepared to support each other, talk to each other, and maybe we can get some more concrete ideas down, all right, and get some some things assigned, actions assigned, right, for different ones of us to take that might be interested in doing things.
Can parents go to the board meetings you guys have?
We have not had open board meetings since before COVID. In fact, I don't know if they've ever had open board meetings.
Not that I know of, not in my 5 or 6 years around the board.
Well, can you do virtual parents at a board meeting, or you just don't do board meetings and nobody else goes?
Yeah, it's a good question. One that that I can certainly talk with the current board president about.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what that,
What?
what is the, hold on, CHDO board?
CHODO, that's the Community Housing Development Organization Board. So in the city of Aurora, we are a CHODO, Community Housing Development Organization. And basically we have received funding through the city of Aurora's HUD funding to rehab or do some major work to a couple of our houses. So in order to do that, we had to be a CHODO. So we don't do anything major with it ongoing because most people that are CHODOs buy homes in an area and fix them up and sell them to low-income owners. But we do stuff on the multifamily special needs housing side. And haven't done anything in quite a few years, Kathy, but we have to keep up that designation until those funds that we had been awarded are forgiven, which they get forgiven a little bit each year until like it's about 10 years usually.
Okay.
That's a good question. All right, I am going to say good night to you all and thank you. I think this was a good, great presentation and a good conversation. Thanks very much. This recording will be up usually it's up by tomorrow afternoon on our website, and we could look at how we might mail that, email that to people or send it out, in a link if you think that would, be of interest to people. And we'll keep on these conversations. Plan to be here at 309 New Indian Trail Court in Aurora on August 25th at 6 p.m. Thanks. Have a good
Sounds
week.
great. Good night, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for all you do, Lori.